Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mkestand. Today is Wednesday, March 26th, 2025, the last hump day, of course, of March, as we're almost a quarter of the way through the year already, as we're coming down to the end of the month here. Uh, we're, of course, about, a few, basically a few days officially into spring here. So, anyways, as always, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. But what I will tell you is we have quite a bit of news tonight to go over. And I'll mention all that in a moment here. Of course, as always, guys, if you can help, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Well, with that being said, I think I will go ahead and just jump right into it, as we do have at least three people in here now. So tonight we're gonna go over three stories: two from Founding in the Comics, one from Bleeding Fool. A couple of comic related stories, um, and a couple of comics related stories, and an anime related story. We got again, just following up on the continuing saga going on with whether or not they should bring Peter and Mary Jane back together in the comics, in the mainstream comics. As um, we got another little excerpt from Tom Brevoort on that, and his interactions with fans over that. We've got some Gundam news in regards to the franchise there. We have we also have, let me see now. And then there's supposedly only one, if I read the headline right, supposedly there's only one comic book shop left in Tallahassee, Florida. We'll be looking at that. And on the wrestling side of the thing, um, of course, we'll, after we get through the articles, and we will, of course, go into the wrestling wrap up. Quite a bit of news going on there, aside from, of course, the recap of what happened on last night's NXT, as well as looking ahead to tonight's AW Dynamite. Over the past couple of days, there's been quite a bit of movement in the world of professional wrestling, as has been confirmed a confirmed departure, a signing, a firing, and a potential future departure that we're going to be talking about. And then, of course, we'll wrap things up with, of course, this day in each history. So, with all that being said, um, one more friendly reminder here: if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get more, try to get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the question to the best of my ability. So, anyway, let me just do this real quick, and then I think we'll just jump right into it. All right, so with that, let's get into this then. Let me pull up the first article we will be looking at. Alrighty then. This kind of an ongoing story we've been following for the last month or so. Kind of the back and forth going on between Marvel executive editor Tom Brevoort and some comic book fans on his over his so Marvel Comics exec editor pushes back against fans. Says publisher has, quote, concluded decisively that the best platonic ideal of Spider-Man is one that is unattached, unquote. Article by Spencer McCulley, published March 24th, 2020. So, contrary to the fact that fans have shown that they want this, that sales are slightly better for the Ultimate Spider-Man series, due in part to the fact of Spider-Man, of Peter and Mary Jane being back together as a married couple. Tom Brevoort is still snubbing his nose up at the fans, basically sticking the middle finger at everybody, telling them that he knows better than they do what they want and like. So let's get into this and see what's going on in this latest development, as they said. In the latest development in the ongoing debate regarding the topic of the wall crawler's marital happiness, Marvel Comics executive editor Tom Brevoort says that despite the fact that readers overwhelmingly want to see Spider-Man and Mary Jane get back together, the publisher has, quote, concluded decisively, unquote, that the hero is as his narrative best when he is at his narrative best when he is, quote unquote, is unattached. So even though fans want it, even though from what we've heard, the sales are proving this, because Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Joshua Williamson, where Peter and Mary Jane are married and raising a family, as opposed to being unattached, as Brevoort has put it. Sales are slightly better for that storyline than for the platonic one, or the one where he's unattached. He's still tripling down now on his view. So, but let's see what his reasoning is here. Let's look at his reasoning here. Again, the fans are saying they want it. I think the fans are proving that they want it by buying the book that has it, as opposed to not buying, as opposed to buying the book that doesn't have it as much. Let's and of course, as always, guys, feel free to comment and or ask questions if anything here grabs your attention. But anyways, let's kind of continue on with this. So the Marvel Comics exec offered this insight into the company's current creative direction. As always, while answering fan questions for the March 23rd, which was this past Sunday, entry of his personal Man with a Hat Substack blog. Pressed by one reader as to whether or not there existed a threshold that a book like Ultimate Spider-Man, in parentheses, or Renew Your Vows, or Spider-Girl, or any other Peter and MJ are a married couple projects through the decades, unparenthesed there, could reach that would cause editorial to say, in smaller quotes, okay, amazing is losing to this other book. Clearly, the thing the audience is responding to is married Spider-Man. We should bring that back into main continuity. Unquote. Brevoort unfortunately confirmed that not only were there no relevant metrics for reuniting the fan favorite couple, but also that the publisher had absolutely zero interest in ever giving their relationship another chance. Yeah, no relevant metrics. The fact that the book that currently has them as a married couple is actually, from what we've heard, is actually selling slightly better than the book, than the main continuity book. The fact that fans have overwhelmingly stated they want to see Peter and Mary Jane back together in the main continuity. No relevant metrics here, Mr. Bravort. You're either blind, stupid, a complete jerk, or all of the above. Uh, no matter how many, apparently no matter how times that, no matter what is basically pointed out there, whether it's fans wanting, basically saying they want them back together in the main storyline, no matter how the sales numbers are showing that, he apparently Bravort is telling everybody he doesn't care. Marvel Comics could go down in flames and he'd still stick his heels into the ground. The dude is either blind, deaf, dumb, a jerk, or all of the above. Obvious. Anyway, getting back to the article here. Quote, if I was a smart man, I would let this deadly fastball go by untouched. Maybe make new mistakes, right? Unquote, he began. Quote, you never say never, Brandon, but I don't believe that there is any such threshold because that's not what publishing Ultimate Spider-Man or Renew Your Vows and the like is all about. Those aren't test cases. They are all alternatives for those who desire those alternatives. Well, that may be true, but if the alternative is doing better than the main product, then that should tell you something, dude. If the alternative is actually telling you something where it's actually doing better than the main product, that should tell you, well, maybe you should consider, this alternative as and making the alternative the main plot point or the main thing. Again, feel free to comment and or ask questions if anything grabs your attention here. So, quote, but I believe that we've concluded decisively the best platonic ideal of Spider-Man is one that is unattached, and that conclusion isn't going to be changed by a particular alternate interpretation momentarily performing well, unquote. He then revealed, quote, an Amazing Spider-Man has been consistently our best-selling regular title for a decade and a half, so another book selling better than it isn't cause for concern. It isn't? It's cause for celebration, but Amazing Spider-Man sales continue to click along just as they've consistently done. So pointing to Ultimate, including that one and only factor contributing to its success is coincidentally the one factor that those fans would like changed about Amazing Spider-Man is working backwards from a desired conclusion. Oh, I don't know. I would have to kind of disagree with that. I mean, how long does that all? I mean, you almost have to ask him here. How long does that alternate? Because he said, well, this is just a momentary thing, and it's only outselling it momentarily. Well, how long does it have to outsell the main product before knock knock? It clicks with you that maybe you might want to reconsider this staunch opposition to bringing Peter and Mary Jane back together in the main universe. How long does it have to outsell, before you realize, okay, maybe we did make a mistake with our initial premise. Maybe you know, not necessarily saying that it is the only selling point for the Ultimate book, but obviously it is something that's obviously drawing more fans to buy it than Amazing Spider-Man. And to kind of minimize that by saying, "Oh, this is just a momentary thing." Well, then I ask you, how long does it have to outsell the main product before it clicks with you that maybe you should reconsider your thoughts on that? So let's see. For the uninitiated, while Spider fans have been banging the war drum regarding a retcon of One More Day, pretty much since the day of the event's final issue. One More Day was where they did have a situation where Peter and, in the main continuity, Peter and Mary Jane never got married. It was something that Peter had to sacrifice in order to save Aunt May, as I understand it. Of course, I know people like RJ, and those who are still more reading the regular comics would probably know a bit more than I am. But The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 545, hit shelves. The discourse surrounding all right, so then the day of the event, final issue, The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 545, hit shelves. The discourse surrounding the fact has seen a massive resurgence in recent months, thanks to Jonathan Hickman and Marco Checchetto's Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 3, an exceptionally good book which features a married Peter and MJ as one of its major narrative elements. Okay, so even most people would acknowledge that Peter and MJ as a married couple is a major narrative element there. To this end, Bravort found himself becoming a party to the current conversation on March 9th, courtesy of that day's edition of the aforementioned Substack blog. Again, this debate's been going on for quite a while, obviously. Asked whether he thought the, quote, recurring idea that the success of the new Ultimate Spider-Man, in parentheses, with a married Peter Parker, on parentheses, is an indication that the regular 616 Peter's marriage to Mary Jane should be reinstated, and that it is a fault of the editors over there for not recognizing that and thus reaping similar sales success, unquote. So again, being an executive editor, Tom Brevoort is just again he's sticking his heels in, sticking his toes in the sand, maybe sticking his head in the sand for all we know, and just continuously ignoring what the fans are saying to him for whatever reason. Hey Natsumi. Hi, hey Natsumi. Anyways, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability here. So let's see. Of course, let's reread how, because I think we read this portion of it back when we read that article back then. But the editor waved off the fan. Quote, "Yeah, I've been hearing from a couple of yahoos." So that, yeah, and if you guys remember when we mentioned that, so he called the people the people who are wanting this. He basically is calling them yahoos. That just shows you the level of respect he has for his customers, right? Whose idea of a good time is to send us the same form letter about MJ and Paul every single day. But here's the thing. I think the point of view that you're talking about is simply incorrect, unquote. Quote, first off, the difference in sales between Ultimate Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man is relatively slim, he argued. His assertion, unfortunately true. Quote, it's not like Ultimate is doing twice or three times the business or anything. However, though, it is consistently out. If even if it is slight, right? Even if it is slight, you know, um, you're still the Ultimate is still consistently outselling the main. The alternate is still consistently outselling the mainstream, the mainstream. So that should really tell you something. And secondly, I don't think that the success of Ultimate at the moment is just down to Pete and MJ being married within it. But again, it's considered a major narrative point, major narrative element. It's obviously the major narrative element that's basically bringing more people to buy that book and buying Amazing Spider-Man. I think it has a lot to do with the quality of work that Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto are producing, which is probably true. But the fact is that with their talent, right? With their talent, they're making the marriage work. Maybe Marvel, if they really want to keep from completely dying out, maybe they should fire Brevoort and make Hickman the executive editor. But quote, so I get that people who want Pete and MJ back together are of course going to point to that series, but the truth is that it doesn't really make a convincing argument to me at all, unquote. He concluded, quote, I've been around this particular sort of book too many times over the years to mistake the signals, unquote. Well, he is mistaking the signals because basically he's basically just ignoring, thumbing his nose up and flipping the bird to the very fans are basically telling him every which way they can, verbally, through sales. And it may not be like a huge difference in sales numbers, but the fact is Ultimate does seem to be consistently, meaning every month or every time the two books are being sold together, it is consistently out, head to head, Ultimate is beating Amazing Spider-Man. All right. Excuse me a moment, folks. I do need to step away because somebody just came to my front door. So we'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. Anyways, as I said before, if you guys, um, as we continue reading this, if anything grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Of course, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. So, anyways, continuing on with this, let's see, where are we at here? Yeah, okay, so you just finished that paragraph, all right? A few days later, Brevoort would throw further fuel onto the spider fire when he began personally and combatively engaging with a number of readers who both disagreed both with his anti-spider marriage stance and his dismissive attitude. At this point, you almost had to, the thing is, if he doesn't respect the fans enough to really listen and take to heart what they're saying, maybe they should really show it by just not, granted, keep buying the book that they, and just not buy any other Marvel books. Maybe that's what they're already doing, but maybe if he loses a few more sales of Amazing Spider-Man, maybe that will wake him up. Quote, "Let me ask you this, fam," unquote. He addressed one critic. Quote, "Is Batman cratering? Absolute Batman is consistently outselling it, right? Is Batman in the toilet? Do they need to bring Martha Wayne back to life in the main series? Seems crazy, right?" Unquote. Attempting to explain his disingenuous comparison, Brevoort asserted, quote, "Martha Wayne is an element of ABBATS that's different from the regular book. So it's analogous to Peter and MJ in Ultimate Spider-Man." Well, I don't think so, because I don't think that's quite right. Because at least in the vein of Peter and MJ being married, that was a major narrative element for a long time, whereas Martha being alive wasn't. So I don't think it's responsible for those sales either. But this is the sort of argument you guys are making. A correlation isn't causality, unquote. Putting a stamp on his blue sky detour, in parentheses, even more highlights of which can be read in our previous article on the topic, unparenthesed. When met by fans frustratingly posting that, quote, "anyone at Marvel can say a title is doing well, and they are not required to offer any proof," unquote. The Marvel Comics exec declared, quote, "Jack, I'm in business. Part of my job is to sell Marvel Comics. You seriously think that if there was an easy way to make sales skyrocket, I wouldn't do it?" Well, apparently you're not doing it, because you're completely ignoring what fans are telling you. You're completely ignoring the sales numbers. Again, how long does it have to outsell before you get it in your head that, maybe you should bring back the idea of Peter and Mary Jane being married in the universe, in the main continuity. Quote, "or that I'm lying about information that I have access to, and you certainly do not." He concluded, quote, "At this point, why are we even talking?" Unquote. Well, I don't think anybody thinks you're lying. I think what people are saying is that you're ignoring the fact that fans are proving it. I think one of the other main differences in terms of his comparison to the absolute Batman and Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter and MJ being married was part of the main continuity for a while, and then was taken out against. Whereas the whole idea of Martha Wayne being alive in present time was not. So different elements there. But basically, overall, and I'm sure most people would agree that it's not the only reason that Ultimate Spider-Man is outselling Amazing Spider-Man, but it is a major part of it. It is a major narrative point. It is a major narrative element. It's one that people, ever since you created this problem in the first place, have been telling you they didn't like it. They did not like that. So again, how long, Mr. Braveheart, how long does it have to keep outselling Amazing Spider-Man before you think, okay, maybe I was wrong here. Maybe we should bring. I think what it comes down to is Braveheart is just a very stupidly proud man who just will not accept that fans want to see, want to see Peter and MJ back together, and they will show that by not buying his books, maybe buying Hickman's books, and maybe Marvel should consider firing Tom Brevoort and hiring Jonathan Hickman as executive editor. And just a thought. Just a thought. Hey, Apex. Good evening, Mike. Natsumi. Just stopping by to like and share. Have you caught Avex? Did you catch any of what I've just been covering here on the whole Marvel comic and Tom Brevoort basically snubbing his nose up at fans and flipping them the bird because basically the evidence seems to show that fans want to see Pete and MJ back together in the main, married in the main continuity, and he's just completely ignoring the fact that Ultimate Spider-Man has been consistently outselling Amazing Spider-Man. Have you caught any of that I just, I'm hoping you're still here and hope you might comment on that. Anyways, feel free to do so. Thank you for dropping in and liking and sharing, of course. But with that, let's go ahead and get ready to move on to the next article. The next article that we will be looking at, of course, is this one coming up. A little bit of an anime, some anime article here. So Gundam franchise animator says shorter anime seasons due to a, quote, a shortage of professional staff, unquote, reveals studios turning to social media for help. Article by Spencer McCulley, published yesterday, March 25th. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on here. So where once a given anime season would present audiences with upwards of 20 episodes, so a full season usually is about 24 to 26, a half season is about 12 to 13, just for notations there. More recent productions have seen their average episode counts dropping to the point where many end up with single-digit runs. And according to veteran Mobile Suit Gundam franchise animator Kyoko Kotani, the reason for this change is simply put that the Japanese anime industry is experiencing a severe workforce shortage across the board, which, considering that there have been, of course, a few passings in the last few years. Some of the people who were on some of those series for quite a long time are, of course, if they're not passing on, they're retiring. So you are seeing that happen. Um, time wears on us all, right? Let's see. Kotani, whose credits include stints as the animation director for 2015's take on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Chronicles, and as a key animator on such series as Spy Family, My Hero Academia, and the Mobile Suit Gundam outings 00, Iron Blood Orphans, and Witch from Mercury, offered this insight into the current state of the industry by a series of posts made to her personal Twitter account. Taking to the social media website on March 23rd, the animator, seemingly apropos of no specific incident in particular, publicly spoke to the fact that, quote, for quite some time now, television series have been expected to meet the same high quality standards as theatrical films, making production increasingly difficult, unquote. Quote, additionally, there is a shortage of professional staff across all sections relative to the total number of works being produced, which makes it difficult to produce and air 2 consecutive seasons, in parentheses there, unquote. She added, per machine translation of her statements provided by ChatGPT, quote, even if staff are secured for a year, only one core can be made, unquote. Quote, actually, I think it was crazy that until about 10 years ago, everyone worked through Sundays, pulling all-nighters, making an episode in about 2 months, immediately airing it, unquote, recalled Kotani in a follow-up post. Quote, now the shortage of staff is even worse than back then, so while it's still common for people to work through Sundays and pull all-nighters, it's even more intense, unquote. Probably because you don't have as many people, don't seem to have as many people, um, going about things. So anyway, don't have as many people being able to work. But anyways, met with the observation from one of their Japanese followers that, quote, even though there are people available, there aren't enough professional workers, unquote, especially in light of artists, quote, not wanting to incorporate AI operations, unquote. Animator clarified, quote, it's not just that there are people available, but especially a shortage of animators who can do layouts and key animation. Parentheses, since this is the initial stage of creating the visuals for commercial animation. This part can't be resolved. Nothing can move forward, in parentheses, unquote. Quote, as a result, on platforms like Twitter and other online spaces, amateurs and beginners are being asked to work, unquote, she continued. Quote, this is just because reference materials need to be prepared for dubbing, in parentheses, adding sound effects, on parentheses. So they're being asked for that task. Of course, the level isn't good enough for broadcast, so the animation directors and supervisors have to redo all the drawings and the timing sheets. This takes up a lot of time, unquote. Turning to address said follower's point regarding AI, Kotani then explained, quote, generative AI is problematic both in terms of copyright issues and in terms of animation production process. So using it is really impractical, unquote. Quote, there was one time when, for a project set in modern Japan, the original drawings were fed into AI, and the AI generated backgrounds were delivered, unquote, she noted. Quote, the perspective guide ended up being turned into a wall, and the cityscape became buildings um, from medieval Western architecture. It was really terrible. Of course, it had to be redone, unquote. So basically, right now the anime industry seems to be having quite a bit of difficulty with the workload and stuff, and that's maybe why there is shorter seasons and all that. Let's see. Offering a final clarification on the entire matter, then pressed by another follower as to how Toei Animation is able, quote, to produce consecutive TV anime year after year, unquote, Kotani asserted, quote, I think it's because their company were making more than 4 core seasons is the norm, unquote. So basically what they're saying there is that Toei's workload is just more, they're used to having that heavier workload. Quote, if they stopped doing that, the know-how wouldn't be passed down, and it would be really difficult to do the same thing again, unquote, she detailed. Quote, recently, even at most companies, production desks often don't have experience working on anime that involve more than 2 consecutive cours or seasons, unquote. Oh, there we go with that one. So, all right. So we're 2/3 of the way through on the main stories before we, of course, get to the wrestling wrap up and the this day in each history. Let's see. Um, now, of course, to move to the last story that we'll be looking at here. And I guess we will have an indie comic showcase tomorrow. I guess they just posted one up today. All right, so here's the last story. Here's the last article we're going to go over tonight here. Of course, a friendly reminder: if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage if you haven't already. And also, if anything here we talk about grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, that being said, let's take a look at this. So, only one comic book shop left standing in Tallahassee, Florida. Article by Avi Green, published today. All right, so let's get into this then. FSU News wrote about Fallout Comics, which seems to be the only specialty store left in Tallahassee, which once had a few more. So FSU, I'm thinking that might mean Florida State University, which I think is where it might be, is in Tallahassee. But anyways, let's look at this. So this is from the FSU News article here. So once a vibrant hub of collectors and casual readers, the Tallahassee comic book scene now struggles to keep pages turning. Stable comic book stores such as Geek's Closet and Cosmic Cat Comics have closed over the last year, having avid readers and fans devastated. While many comic book stores in Tallahassee have closed, one still stands tall: Fallout Comics, renowned for its expansive 10,000 square foot space. It stands as one of the largest comic book stores in the state. Fallout Comics has a constant 20% off sale on all merchandise. For patrons, this is an amazing deal, but for the comic book scene in Tallahassee, this highlights a deeper issue: the struggle to keep foot traffic flowing. Now, this is Avi responding to what we just read here. Discount prices are certainly a great way to encourage buying, but if they're selling the worst of DC and Marvel from the past 20 years, that may not be worth paying even an 80% discount for. It's independents, to be sure, that are likely to have something worthwhile, in parentheses, though not if it's IDW we're talking about, on parentheses. As for DC Marvel, yes, they come up here along with the film industry. So yeah, and we of course we talked about one of Marvel's problems in an earlier article, of course. Um, but anyways, big box competitors like Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, as well as the rapidly expanding superhero movie industry, are the biggest threats for businesses like Fallout Comics. Quote, digital technology has changed the way we read, unquote. Tommy Cowan, a PhD student and English teaching assistant at MSU, said, quote, humanity has put down the book, the paper, and the brochure and rediscovered the scroll through computer screens, unquote. In other words, in layman's terms, basically instead of reading a book, a newspaper, or a brochure, people are basically just going online and getting their news that way. Production companies like Marvel and DC make accessing superhero stories easy. They provide a convenient alternative to visiting a comic store, which leads to less commercial support for businesses like Fallout Comics. Quote, the movies now are where a lot of people are exposed to these sorts of characters, unquote. Ross Moret, professor of the, quote, ethics and superheroes, unquote, honor signature course at FSU, said, quote, but they still get more of their source material from comics, unquote. Avi's response to what was just said there. In the past quarter century, yes, it could be said that people were going to comics movies, but now if we take Marvel as a prime example, their fortunes are receding as a result of their shift to PC, or politically correct, and it's taken a toll that they may not recover from. DCs have almost entirely collapsed too in the past 6 years. So why are we being told that superhero film industry is quote unquote expanding? No longer, I would think, if anybody gets their source material from comics now, let's hope it's the tasteful independents. And back to the article here. Let's see. All right, all right, so, quote, people need to go back to having material items that they can sit and read and not have everything be so digital, unquote. FSU Diana Chirilla said, quote, comics let people sit and enjoy the media without so many distractions. In an era dominated by movie remakes, many blockbusters have introduced wider audiences to comic book inspired stories. However, these adaptations often fall short of the creativity needed to immerse audiences into the nuances of the original work. Quote, I think that comics that are well written can definitely compete with movies and other mediums, unquote, FSU student Justin Roberts said. Quote, because people care more about the story than the mediums. Comics offer a good alternative, in small quotes here. Invincible proved that point. A lot of people watched the show and then started reading the book, which that can't happen. Let's see Avi's response to that. But Invincible is a creator-owned comic published by Image Comics. It can be assumed that creator-owned comics adapted to screen aren't as affected as adaptations of Marvel DC. A good point is made that physical copies of comics are far better than digital. But even that needs to see improvement in the sense that publishers have to stop being so utterly reliant on monthly pamphlets as the format and change to paperback hardcover. And back to the article here for a moment. Comic books offer endless possibilities for meaningful community that movies can't compete with. An obvious response to that, certainly not live action. And if anybody today argues that there's live action movies and TV shows that haven't aged well as a result, it's a reasonable opinion. This is also why animation should be considered as a potential platform for science fiction or science fantasy going forward. And filmmakers shouldn't be held hostage by the notion it all has to remain kid friendly. If anything, USA animators have to prove they can market and encourage a local audience in the same way Japan did across the Atlantic. At the end, and then back to the article here. Quote, for many decades, comics were considered low art in small parentheses there. And this meant that they were either ignored by critics and scholars, or they were analyzed as part of the smaller quote culture industry, unquote, Cowan said. Quote, FSU should have an official degree program for making graphic novels, unquote. Let's see now. Then this is Avi's response to that statement. Well, not if it's a leftist establishment. What if they refuse to welcome conservatives to contribute to their program? Some sage advice is not to politicize the medium or to monopolize it. The only reason certain segments believe comicdom's worth its weight in gold today is as a leftist political tool, not a merit-based storytelling platform. Comics in the past were employed for making statements, but it wasn't for the reasons some leftists today see it as useful for. In other words, what he's saying there is while comics did at times have their messaging in there, and we will be getting into that soon in the historical comic retrospective, we get into more the early 40s and get more into the like World War II type stories as we get into it. It wasn't the main driving force. The main driving force was still to entertain people, in those olden days. Mainstream corporate-owned comics certainly shouldn't be exploited for the wokery that shifted comics today. One more reason why DC and Marvel would be better off closed down or bought out by a business with more common sense. Good luck to Fallout Comics, they'll need it. All right, so there we go. That's all of the articles we have for tonight. So Now we'll move on to the wrestling wrap up. And of course, I actually have quite a bit to talk about on that end as well. Um, as of course, not only do we have, of course, go over, go over, go over what happened on last night's. We not only have to go over what happened on last night's NXT, but we also, of course, will look ahead to tonight's Dynamite, as well as talk about some of the happenings that happened in the last couple of days. There's quite a bit of movement and potential movement been talked about the last couple of days. So, of course, the first thing we'll do is I'll go over the results of last night's NXT and just talk about um, so on last night's NXT, which was held from the W Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, the opening match saw Stephanie Vaquer successfully defend the NXT Women's title over Jada Parker. After the match, Fatal Influence, led of course by Fallon Henley, tried to jump Vaquer to soften her up for Fallon Henley's rematch or I guess contractual rematch for the North American title later that night, only for Vaquer, of course, to be saved by Jordynne Grace to basically take out Jada Parker and the members of Fatal Influence, Fallon Henley, JC Jane, and Jasmine Nix. Then the match was followed up with a tag match in which Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe, accompanied the ring by Wes Lee, defeated Hank and Tank Ledger, and Hank Walker in a tag team match. That saw Wes Lee, distract the ref long enough for DuPont and Igwe to get to basically get a major hit on Hank and Tank to get the win. In a match for the NXT Heritage Cup, Lexis King retained via countout over Javon Evans as NXT champion Oba Femi came out and attacked with the referee's back turned, attacked Javon Evans. Nobody knows why. And then the mysterious group came out to kind of try to intimidate Femi, as it were, leading, after the match, leading to a confrontation between initially Evans and Obafemi, and then for Trick Williams to come out and knock Javon Evans out of the ring as well, only for a potential confrontation between Femi and Williams. And then another tag team match, in kind of a match that was kind of initially sparked on this past Thursday's TNA Impact, as both teams made appearances on Impact. Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley defeated Metaphor, Jakara Jackson, Last Legend, as Dolan and Paxley are set to have a match against TNA World Knockouts Tag Champions on this Thursday's edition of Impact, with, of course, Metaphor and former Knockouts Tag Champion Spitfire banned from ringside. Ethan Page defeated Andre Chase in 10 minutes, a singles match. And in the main event, saw Stephanie Vaquer successfully retain the Women's North American title against Fallon Henley. After which, of course, once again, Fallon Henley, along with her Fatal Influence teammates of JC Jane and Jasmine Nix and Jada Parker, all look to once again beat down Vaquer again, only again for Jordynne Grace to come and make the save and help knock the four women out, only for only for Grace to have a face-to-face confrontation with Kerr, kind of indicating to her, "Hey, look, I want your title." Hey, Fishozo, welcome to the show. Hopefully, you're having a good evening. If you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything we talk about grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. But with that, now that we kind of got through everything going on NXT, let's get into some news real quick here before we talk about what to look forward to on tonight's Dynamite, as there has been quite a bit of movement in the last couple of days here, and we will one of the first things, of course, we'll talk about. Well, I'll mention here is the fact that it has been confirmed that Saraya, aka formerly WWE's Paige, has departed AEW. So a contract apparently came up, and she is now I believe, a free agent. There has been some talk if she's willing to return to the WWE, as something was cleared up in which I guess Triple H initially thought that she left of her own accord, but it more recently came out that she was actually let go by John Laurinaitis at the time. But she has indicated under the right circumstances, she might be willing to return to the WWE to work for them. She's also said that there's no hard feelings with AEW either. She might be willing to go back there. So where she goes from here, nobody knows for sure. So also in other AEW news, talking about a couple of so as confirmed yesterday, Mina Shirakawa I think her time will officially end here at the end of the month here with Stardom, as it's been, I guess, reported that she is now officially signed with AEW and will be showing up on. Now, Mina Shirakawa, of course, has made appearances over the past couple years here in AEW and Ring of Honor. Of course, everybody might remember, her part in the storyline between Mariah May and Toni Storm. She'll now become a full-time performer, I believe, starting maybe next month or in May. I don't know when her first appearance in AEW as a full-time performer will be, but over the next few weeks here, she'll be finishing up her time in Stardom, as she'll have a few matches. Her next match at Stardom will be April 2nd, which I believe is this. Actually, let's see. Actually, it's 1 week from today, in fact. But they did have a news conference in Japan earlier today that Mina Shirakawa's time in Stardom is coming to an end, and she will be moving on to AEW. She'll have basically her last show with her last Kurikan Hall show with Stardom 1 week from today, and then she'll be then her last Stardom show in Japan period will be Sunday, April 6th, and then she'll be part of the 2-day American Dream Tour of Stardom when they, on the 17th and 18th, as part of, WrestleCon, WrestleMania week there. Stardom will be hosting a couple of shows in Vegas, coming to the States and hosting a couple of shows in Vegas, in which she'll be a part of. And then I guess after that, we'll probably start seeing her. Now, in Mina's case, of course, she's got some interesting storylines, and I'll get into one of them. She, of course, will probably be looking to get some revenge on Mercedes Moné, who took the Rev Pro British Undisputed Women's title from her. Mina has, of course, in interviews, has made known that she wants to either take that title, the TBS title, or the New Japan Strong title. She wants to take at least one of those titles from Moné. So you can see that when she comes back, there's going to be some initial heat there. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes down. And speaking, of course, of Mariah May, who I mentioned briefly here a moment ago, so it's being reported that her contract with AEW, which she signed about 2 years ago, will probably be coming up towards the end of summer. So now Mariah May, of course, has been off AEW TV, after her loss to Toni Storm at Revolution, basically selling the brutality of that match and losing, how she lost the title to Storm back in February at Grand Slam in Australia, and then concluding their feud last month at or earlier this month, I guess, at Revolution in the Hollywood Ending match. She's been off TV since. I guess in the midst of potential contract talks, but there's some talk that her contract will be up sometime in late summer. So there could be a potential bidding war if AEW does not sign her before her contract. They don't re-sign her before her contract comes up. The 26-year-old British star could be getting a big payday from WWE to go to WWE. There's been some talk that WWE might have some interest in Mariah May. Some people commented how there are some similarities between Mariah May's run in AEW and Jade Cargill's. There are fans and some people are hoping that it doesn't end the same way as Jade Cargill's time in AEW ended. Now, in further AEW news, of course, looking ahead to tonight's Dynamite, what you can expect on tonight's Dynamite, as it were. Coming from the Roy Wilkins Auditorium in St. Paul, Minnesota, with Excalibur, Tez, and Tony Schiavone on commentary on TBS. In a non-title match, International Champion Kenny Omega will be taking on Blake Christian. We'll have Lee Johnson in his corner. Brody King takes on Kyle Fletcher of the Don Callis family. The Don Callis family is featured heavily tonight as Mark Davis will be taking on Powerhouse Hobbs. And former International Champion Konosuke Takeshita will be taking on former Ring of Honor World Champion Mark Briscoe. And set up as the main event in the tag team match, current AEW World Women's Champion Toni Storm will be teaming with former AEW World Heavyweight Champion, Women's World Heavyweight Champion Thunder Rosa to take on Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Megan Bayne, who is set to challenge Toni Storm for the AEW Women's World Title, coming up at Dynasty on April 6th. So coming up in about a week and a half here. So that's all for the wrestling wrap-ups, as it were. So one last piece of wrestling news before we move on to this day in each history. As this came down today, apparently Gail Kim has been let go, has basically been fired from TNA, and has drawn a lot of ire. Now, apparently, it's part of some, I guess, restructuring with new management and all that, as a few management people have also been fired. But Gail Kim, there are people in the industry who believe that Gail Kim's firing is a little bit baffling, and there are even people within TNA who are saying that could hurt their women's division, and she was a major influence on that. Now, since Gail Kim does not have a non-compete clause, she could show up in any federation she wants potentially tomorrow. So she could show up in AEW, she could show up in WWE, or she could even she could even go on maybe go back up north. Now she's been retired as an active competitor for the last few years, so I don't know if she's looking to get back into the ring per se. She's been more like an agent, and people have talked about, how she's one of the few female like agents, managerial position type people. I could see her maybe going back up to Canada, maybe even hooking up with Scott D'Amore's Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, serving in a, I guess, like a authority figure type capacity there, maybe helping get their women's division going up there. But I guess we'll just wait and see what happens with all that. So with that being said, today is Wednesday, March the 26th, 2025. So let's take a look back at this day in Beach history. History! So let me just see all this in. Let me see, 2014. Let's see, 2005. Five, 2010, and 2005. All right, so first off, we're going to head back 20 years ago, as on this date 20 years ago, back in 2005. Since I pull it up here. On this date in 2005, Jack Evans and Teddy Hart of the famous Hart family defeated B-Boy and Homicide to win the JPW Tag Team Championships. That's Jersey All Pro Wrestling, which is another one of those more hardcore versions like ECW, XPW, what we talked about yesterday. So on this date 20 years ago today, Jack Evans and Teddy Hart defeated B-Boy and Homicide to become the new JPW Tag Team Champions. And 2005 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As also on this date in 2005, AIC A.S.T.A's ACI A.S.T.A's Magical Cannon completed its run on Tokyo MX on this date back in 2005. So 20 years ago today, AIC A.S.T.A's Magical Cannon completed its run on Tokyo MX. It was basically it's the anime story. Completed its run on there. Now, moving ahead to 2010, on this date, 15 years ago today, as soon as I find it, let's see. On this date back in 2010, 5 days after it premiered at the Gibson Amphitheater, DreamWorks Animation's How to Train Your Dragons had its widespread U.S. release on this date back in 2010. So 15 years ago today, DreamWorks Animation's How to Train Your Dragon had its U.S. widespread release on this date back in 2010. And finally, in 2014 here, 11 years ago today, on this day, 11 years ago today, the fifth and final issue of Bloodhound Crowbar Medicine from Dark Horse went on sale on newsstands on this date back in 2014. Sold for $3.99, which 32 pages. So on this date, 11 years ago today, fifth and final issue of Bloodhound Crowbar Medicine went on sale on newsstands on this date back in 2014. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here with more niche news tomorrow. Of course, we will It looks like we'll be going over the latest Indie Comics Showcase article from Chris Braley from Bleeding Fool. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.